All right, so today we are going to move into our next lesson where we're going to be able to have two main things. We want to be able to explain the effects of the Columbian Exchange, and then we want to be able to explain who benefited from this thing called mercantilism. So this is going to be a slightly longer lesson today, but we want to be able to cover a good bit of information so that we'll be able to work on these two activities when we meet during our regularly scheduled class. So we want to start talking about these effects of the Columbian Exchange. So where we left off last time that we met, we were discussing Columbus, hence the name Columbian Exchange. So we were talking about Columbus and how he started to, quote, quote, explore the New World. Well, this is going to set off a huge movement among European empires to start colonizing and exploring what they deemed to be the New World, which was North and South America. And so this is going to lead to a lot of there are some good things and a lot of bad things. And we got to think about now there's going to be all this trade that's going to be happening. So all these goods that are going to be in North America are going to make their way to Europe and Africa. And all these goods that were in Europe and Africa are going to be making their way to North and South America. But that's a good and a bad thing which we're going to see. So we want to be able to explain the effects of the Columbian Exchange. And then later on when we get into our notes, we're going to talk about being able to explain who benefited from this thing called mercantilism. So what exactly was the Columbian Exchange? So what exactly was it? This Columbian Exchange, it was the movement of products, ideas, slaves, animals, and diseases between the old and the new world. So as you see in this picture right here, we see that all of these goods were starting to be traded between Europe, Africa, and Asia to the Americas. So we see stuff like coffee beans, bananas, fruits, livestock. But then you're going to notice it's going to start talking about these diseases that are going to start being traded to the New World. And it's going to start getting into the slave trade, which we will get into our next lesson. So we see that there are goods being sent to the Americas from Europe, Africa, and Asia, but then also there's going to be these goods that are going to be traded from the Americas to Africa, Europe, and Asia. So you see all these different goods right here are going to make their way across the Atlantic. So it's a big circular motion almost. So the process. So the first thing you need to know about the process of the Columbian Exchange is that Columbus and others stole food and other goods from the Americas and sent them from Europe. So they didn't buy any of these things. They just stole it or seized it from the natives and sent it to Europe from the Americas. But then they, at the same time, were bringing these goods right here, such as different goods, diseases, and slaves from Europe and Africa to the Americas. So they were bringing all of these goods along with slaves and diseases to the Americas, which they were then forcing the natives to sell or to buy from them. So the last thing you need to know is that this set in motion this circular process, like I mentioned earlier, that had many lasting effects on the globe. So you see these circular processes right here that ended up having a long-lasting effect on the globe. So keep that in mind as we go forward. So what are some positive effects, if any, of the Columbian Exchange? The only positive, really positive, truly positive effects of the Columbian Exchange is that they brought new food and animals to Europe and the Americas. So it brought new food and animals to the Europe and the Americas. That's your first thing. And then the second thing is that it brought new technologies to the Americas, such as the plow. So it brought new technology, I guess you could say, to the Americas, which is like the plow. But then we're going to focus in on some of these negative effects. And the main thing you need to know is that these new diseases from Europe were killing the natives by the millions. So these new diseases, like right here, it's talking about smallpox, ended up killing millions of natives. That's your first negative effect. And then your second negative effect is that it led to the future slave trade. So it led to the future slave trade. So just like we mentioned last week, Columbus, because he started to enslave the natives, but they were dying out so fast that he ended up having to help kind of jumpstart the African slave trade, which we'll see and get into the next time we meet. So those are your positive and negative effects of the Columbian Exchange. So we will also go back and watch a few videos on this and do an activity in class when we meet in person next time. But those are just some quick overview of the Columbian Exchange. But now let's move into this more detailed topic called mercantilism. So this is our second learning target of the day that we want to be able to finish. And that is, we want to be able to explain who benefited and who didn't under mercantilism. So we start off with the goal of these European empires. There were two main goals of the European empires during that time. First thing, they wanted to increase their trade. They wanted to increase their trade. So they want to increase the amount of things that they traded. And so in doing so, it would lead to our second goal, and that was to grow their wealth. So they wanted to increase their trade, and in doing so, it would grow their wealth. So in this picture right here, you see an example of the British Empire during the time. So England is this tiny little country right here, but they ended up being one of the strongest empires ever. You see they've got people in North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, and Australia. So literally they had colonies on every single continent on Earth. And so their goal was to grow their wealth by being able to force all these different areas to trade with them, because they would always end up making money for it. And so how exactly do they want to make all this wealth? That's your next section, how to make all this wealth. So the empires, they explored around the globe for colonies in order to increase their wealth. So they were able to explore all around the globe, as you see right here in this picture. They were able to explore all around the globe in order to grow their wealth. So by adding all of these colonies, they added just more ways for them to be able to make money. So what exactly is mercantilism, and how does this fit into this trade? So mercantilism, what exactly it is the belief that colonies should be strictly controlled for the sole benefit of the European nation. So everywhere you see these British soldiers right here in North America, South America, Europe, or Asia, Africa, and Australia, each of those, let's say, represents a colony. So under the view and belief system of mercantilism, any benefit should benefit the European nation. So anything good that comes out of these colonies should strictly benefit the European nation. Anything else doesn't matter. So when we're talking about mercantilism, so who exactly benefits? So looking at that picture, the first thing we need to know is that to keep most of the wealth, the trade should benefit the European country. So the European country is going to be who gets the majority of the wealth that comes from all this trade. So, and to do so, your second part that you need to know under who benefits, the mother country must export more than it imports. So it must export more than it imports. And so what I mean by that is, as you see in your definitions on the left side of your notes, to export, kind of like export, exit. So you trade away goods, you sell goods. You import means you buy goods, you bring in. So export, exit, import, bring in. So dealing with who benefits from mercantilism, the mother country, which means the European country, they must export more than they import. So they must sell more than they buy. And so the last thing is a nation is only truly wealthy if it has more gold than any other nation. So that's who benefits. Who benefits from mercantilism? The mother country. Because the mother country is able to sell more than it buys, which means it has more wealth. And so that gives you two results. And the first result is that the colonies, these colonies, they're only viewed as a cheap source of materials. They're not really, viewed as the only benefit that the mother country sees in them is what can it make for them. And the second thing is that the natives of the colonies were forced into slavery and they were expendable. So not only were the colonies just viewed as a way to make money by the mother country, but they were also, the natives were viewed as being, enslaved, and they were just expendable. So, if somebody died, there'd be another person to take their spot, in other words. So this economy set up under a mercantilism system. So the colonies only existed to buy and provide resources to the mother country. So the sole purpose of a colony in the eyes of a European nation was to buy from the mother country and provide the resources to the mother country, which we're going to go over mercantilism in an activity the next time we meet, but this is just some base notes. And so the second thing you need to know about this economy setup is that the laws required the colony to ship the resources only to the mother country. So as you see these arrows right here, the colonies could only ship their resources to the mother country. So let's say this is colony A and the yellow colony is colony B. Colony A can only ship their resources to the mother country. And in return, they can only buy resources from the mother country. The same thing goes for colony B. They can only ship to the mother country and they can only buy from the mother country. The two colonies cannot ship and trade between each other. They're not allowed to. So, like I said, the second thing you need to know for your economy setup is that the laws require the colony to ship resources only to the mother country. And then the third thing you need to know is that the colonies were not allowed to make their own goods. So just like I mentioned, the colonies, they were dependent on the mother country. So the colonies were dependent on the mother country. So they could only ship goods to the mother country and in return buy a finished product from the mother country. They could not trade back and forth between the colonies. Okay, so we get to our process of mercantilism. So pretty much, how does this work? Which we're going to go into this in more detail next time we meet, but just to give you some baseline notes. The first process is that the raw materials taken from the colony and shipped back to the European country. So these raw materials, they were taken from the colony. So let's say timber or, trees. They were cut down from the colony in South America and they were shipped to the mother country in Europe. That's the first step. The second step in the process is that the materials were put together or manufactured, is what it's called, in the mother country. So that timber was then turned into boards for to build a home or something like that in the mother country. And so then the last thing, last step of the process is that the finished product was then sent back to the colony, who were then forced to buy it back. So literally the colony had the resources stole from them, taken away, and then they were forced to buy them back. So your last X is that the finished product was then sent back to the colony, who were then forced to buy it back from the mother country. And so this process worked out for a long time for the mother countries like England, France, Spain, Germany, Belgium. All of this worked out for a long, long time. But there were some challenges that started to crop up or pop up to dealing with controlling mercantilism. So the first thing you need to know is that by the late 1700s, people began to reject this belief. So by the late 1700s, the people, mainly the colonies, started to reject this system of mercantilism. So hint, hint, the United States ended up becoming a country and breaking away from England because of rejecting mercantilism. So the second thing you need to know is that they argued that free trade and competition should control the economy, not the government. So they argued that they should be able to trade, these colonies should be able to trade with whoever they want, not just relying on the government. And so the last thing you need to know, and this is pretty important, is that it challenged the absolute power of the kings. So by these colonies saying, hey, we don't want to just buy from you, we want to buy from whoever we want, this challenged the absolute power of the king. So the king was saying, hey, I have absolute power. You can't tell me who you want to buy and trade from. But the colony's saying, hey, we want to do what we want. That challenges the absolute power of the king. So the future impact, last thing we need to talk about, this future impact is that people would start to question and challenge the king. So never before has this happened. So going forward, people would start to question and challenge the government and the king. So then this would lead to a major issues going forward for the European countries in the years to come. So you don't have a summarizer section for these because we are going to answer these in a different way together in class on Flipgrid the next time we meet after we finish our activities. But I hope this was some good baseline notes for you, and if you have any questions, we will cover them the next time we meet in class. All right, y'all have a great day.